All right, Al, as we call
Hey
you.
guys, thanks for having me.
Okay, so we've talked about how a lot of people know your story. You've done a great job like writing about it on our blog and sharing it a lot on other podcasts and such. But just wanted to take this opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper so that people can really get a full scope of your story and your healing journey. So
I'm excited. No, I love it. You're right. I feel like whenever I'm talking about it, it's mostly high level. And I think if anyone knows how to ask the right questions to pull things out of me that I may not even remember, it's probably you two.
Yeah. So for those of you listening who don't really know our relationship, Allison is my best friend from college. And then Marilee is Allison's aunt. She's married to Allison's mom's brother. So,
although people are always saying we look alike, which I love.
I know
that we your kids look just like your aunt. I'm like, well, that's not possible, but cool. Thanks.
Well, but people also say we look like sisters.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. But I say in college, but that doesn't really tell y'all anything in terms of how long we've been friends. We graduated in 2008. So over 10 years ago. Okay. So Al, why don't you start with just like the early days, childhood, growing up? What was, that like? Paint the picture for us.
Yeah. So I feel like with most people, you grow up, I ate the standard American diet. I'd never had, any big health issues, so to speak. And so I guess until Marilee came along and started pointing out and asking me questions about lifestyle and making connections, I never even would have thought anything about my childhood or being unhealthy or anything like that. Of course, looking back, hindsight's 2020. I'm able to see that, the soy formula that my mom would ship in, she couldn't breastfeed me completely, or I think not maybe past 2 or 3 months. So she and my dad like stretched their budget to like get me this amazing soy formula, and supposedly ages 2 to, almost 3, I pretty much only ate eggs, according to my mom, which, and I'm sure they were conventional. My parents were doing the best they could, but they didn't know the difference, really between organic and conventional and what that can do in terms of hormonal health, especially for a developing, brain, like a child at the age of 2, so impressionable. So anyway, those little things from early childhood, I've started to be able to connect with people like Marilee helping me, to possibly relating to, hormonal issues and shifts later on. And so, I never
as a child, you weren't sick a lot or like out of the, just usual childhood stuff.
Well, and maybe I was, but like you would just get on a quick round of antibiotics, or, just like 95% of people, you don't even think about, if there's multiple ear infections, you just take multiple rounds of antibiotics. If there's stomach issues, you put a child on, some chewable Tums or something. So I just grew up like, most other kids in America.
Yeah. So then in high school, like how did things go then? Or how were you feeling?
Yeah. So that was really the first time that there was maybe something like medical, like a label slapped on me. And it was so I had a period in 6th grade, my first period, and then I never had another one. And so at the time I was like, this is awesome. Like I started my period, which is like the cool thing to do when you're, 13 years old. It's pretty normal. And then it never came back. So I didn't have to deal with like all the things my friends had to deal with once a month. And in high school, my mom was like, okay, we need to figure this out. So went to see a top endocrinologist here in Houston, Texas. And he actually specializes in fertility, but he did an ultrasound. And this was when I was, I guess, 16, 17. And that was when we discovered my ovaries were literally covered in cysts. So like I said, that was the first label I received, and it was polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'd never heard of it. PCOS, super common. Nowadays, I think 1 in 9 women are diagnosed with PCOS, but I was told that this was the cause of amenorrhea, that there was nothing I could do about it. A lot of it was genetics. It wasn't going to really be affected by my diet, and I would not be able to conceive naturally, but I could be on birth control, which he recommended. I was on birth control indefinitely. And then when I was ready to get pregnant and, 10 years or whenever, that I could come back and we could see about what latest fertility treatments were available for me. So that was pretty heavy news to receive. But I think as a 16 or 17-year-old, when I was so far from having babies on the brain, like it didn't hit me as hard. And I accepted it. I owned it. I became the girl with PCOS and just kind of, moved on, took my birth control. So yeah, that was high school, but no other symptoms. I wasn't overweight. I wasn't 40, which is like he was saying, it's a typical, PCOS person back then, was older and didn't have a bunch of facial hair, just carried on.
So Allison, were you 10? How old? You were 13 in sixth grade, or how old were you when you started?
No, I think I was 13. Yeah. In sixth grade when I had my period. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, which is becoming so much younger now. I think I was, this is Kelly. I think I was 14 when I started.
You had your period? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nowadays, I'm definitely hearing more like 9, 10, 11. Yeah.
So, okay. So you got on birth control and still eating like normal diet, no dietary changes. The doctor, said that didn't really impact it. And then you go to college and like what happens in college?
Yeah. Which I will say that rhetoric and the narrative has definitely changed since I was in high school. This was back in 2002 that I was diagnosed with PCOS. And now, research has shown, and it's a lot more well-known, that our lifestyle choices can definitely affect the way that PCOS is presented at the very least, which is awesome that news is out there, because my story, as you'll soon find out as I tell more, definitely proves that to be the case. So yeah, fast forward to college, like happy, healthy, lots of energy. And then sophomore year comes and I literally woke up one morning and had just pain in my upper back, almost as if I had been like hunched over studying for finals all night, and I had not. And I didn't think that much of it, but it was worsening by the day. By Thanksgiving of that year, the pain had traveled down to my lower back. So I was becoming that person with low back pain. You hear about low back pain and how debilitating it can be. And then here I am, this, vibrant, young, healthy, college student at the age of, 19, 20, and I'm basically debilitated by pain. By Christmas, I am starting to lose motor skills. Like I remember, going to get a carton of milk out of the refrigerator back when I was drinking, a glass of conventional milk every morning. Marilee's cringing. And it just basically dropped to the floor. Like I was losing motor skills and numbness in my arms and legs, tingling. So more kind of neurological symptoms. And it was really scary. I felt like my body was not my own. It was out of control. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. But I started seeing specialists, everyone from, physical therapists who were diagnosing me with hypermobility, all the way to, famous trigger point therapists. Like I was traveling to the Northeast to get trigger point therapy.
Before that, I want to just like unpack a little bit more about like what that really looked like for you. Like, like what your days looked like as a college student, watching all your friends go to these parties and you just being in bed and in pain and scared kind of, like not knowing what was going on and why your body was breaking down. Like, can you just talk a little bit more about like just what that time was like?
Yeah. It was really, really hard. And I think those are the seasons where you start to learn like more about yourself. Like I had never been unhealthy. I had never been different from my friend group. And I think in college, like probably more so than ever in your life, like it's really hard to be different than other people, especially when you're living with these, these friends. There usually aren't many more cares other than just kind of day to day as a college student. So I think just that dichotomy also made it a lot more difficult. I mean, I remember regularly calling my dad, because I knew my poor mom probably couldn't handle how bad I was doing mentally, but just calling my dad sobbing, like, Dad, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I'm in so much pain. I can't go to class. This is so hard. Like I would go to class and I would carry this like little mini cooler in my backpack, and inside the cooler were 2 ice packs. And like, I would just put them on my back during class. But by the time they melted, like if class wasn't over, I would have to leave because I was in so much pain. I would pace at the back of the class. I was skipping a lot of school days because my mom and I were traveling up to see a pediatric, oh gosh, Marilee, do you remember the doctor I was seeing in Great Plains, New York? It's for like arthritis specialist. Anyway, we were seeing a ton of people, and of course, with just having, background and connection in Houston, pretty much the best that the medical center here could provide. And really, I felt like the consistent answer was that I'm not quite sure what's going on, but it could be this, and there didn't seem to be this like agreed upon diagnoses, but yet this like ever growing file of EKGs, x-rays, neurological scans, and of course, like the amount of drugs I was on. I mean, starting by beginning of junior year. So I was about a year into this. I was on painkillers, muscle relaxers, antidepressants, sleeping pills. And yeah, just losing a lot of hope for ever feeling better and getting better. I mean, thankfully I had been dating my now husband since high school. So he had seen me go through this and make this shift. And so he was definitely my rock. Like I knew he was never going to leave me, but I definitely had visions of like, I'm only getting worse. And so, I don't know am I going to be in a wheelchair going down the aisle? And I think where I really hit rock bottom was an appointment I had in Houston, and MS was thrown out. And so then I kind of started owning that label, at least for a stint, until my Aunt Marilee came along.
Yeah. And before we get to Marilee, I mean, in high school, you were active, not necessarily like an athlete. Like
I was not the star athlete.
Yeah.
No, that's what Kelly's trying to say.
But you were super active in terms of like exercising and working out. And you were like that when in college, in the beginning of college too.
Yeah.
So you kind of went from being the one that was like always, exercising to not being able to at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was like very fit, very, I definitely wasn't like the one always drinking or always, I mean, I was like fairly healthy for a college student. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we thought we were being super health conscious when we were eating our 100 calorie packs.
Yeah.
And like,
yes. Yes. Those 100 calorie packs are definitely part of my story.
Yeah. Oh man. I remember like at, our little dorm place, I was getting a bagel and cream cheese and eating that while I walked to class and thinking that was so healthy.
Oh, for sure.
Like a
white frozen
bagel.
Yogurt out of that, the yogurt machine that Kelly and I, we lived at this place together freshman year. I thought, wow, this is like such a healthy treat.
What were you thinking when Allison was getting so sick? What was your thought?
So actually we weren't really close until like the end of sophomore year the end of freshman year or sophomore year. So I honestly didn't know you that well when you were in your like healthy prime, or we just weren't really that close. But then I started, I don't even know how did we get so close, Al?
I remember thinking Kelly was so cute and fun. Everyone loved her. And we were at the time at the end of sophomore year. I remember being at this fraternity party and I was like, I kind of want, because we had to like pick our roommates.
That's right.
At the time. I was like, I kind of want a room with Kelly. And so I was like, I think she may want a room with you. I'm like, oh my gosh, that could be so fun. Like I remember specifically that.
Okay.
We kind of agreed on it.
It was that time. So yeah, honestly, like it wasn't until like you had kind of been in the journey a little bit of seeing doctors and everything that we started getting close. So I really didn't watch her go kind of downhill in the beginning.
Yeah, I was all drugged up by the time Kelly came in my life. It was all band-aided.
And Marilee, honestly, when we started getting close, it was kind of like you had it was the same time that you had kind of come into
Yes.
the process. So I was drawn in by what Allison and I were both learning from you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Al, tell us how you ended up going from doctors around the country to talking to your aunt in the hill country.
Yeah.
In Texas.
Well, that Thanksgiving, that was one of the hardest of seasons of my life. We went to our family was all together. And I think that was the first time. I mean, Marilee had been hearing through my mom, her sister-in-law, that her niece was struggling and not doing well. But at the same time, Marilee is one of those people that's very discerning. She knew that, I probably didn't have ears to hear. I'm in college. I was very medical minded, grew up just in very conventional, health space. But I think, God moved her to just speak up. And thankfully it was the right time. I was so desperate, when you're just so desperate, you'll just do anything and hang on to any next step or any light of hope. And so, Marilee and I spoke during that Thanksgiving, and she started asking me questions, and definitely more lifestyle questions. I remember her asking, have you recently moved, or tell me about your diet. What are you eating? And it was the first time I had seen, a dozen or so specialists and filled out so many different intake forms. And it was mainly about genetics. And it was the first time that someone had ever asked me anything about my environment, about my diet. I mean, the very first time. So even though I didn't believe at the time that this was the connection, it just seemed, so far-fetched. I hadn't grown up in that mindset. I loved that, one, it was an approach I hadn't heard, and two, it was something that I could control. So there was so much hope there.
And I want to say that one of the big things that I look for in a situation like Allison's, I'll go, okay, so you're telling me you were healthy, you gave your history to us, and then all of a sudden you woke up one day. And so I asked the question, all right, I want to know what you have done differently from, the times that you were, doing fine, and then all of a sudden you had this situation come up. So I did. I asked Allison, what have you done? What has changed?
Yes, exactly. And that's when I told Marilee, I said, well, actually, maybe a week before the pain started, I had moved into a brand new apartment complex with, all my friends. And it was brand new, as in they were painting as we were moving in. We were stepping over, all the construction materials, and, because school was starting and the apartment building had promised we could get in at a certain time. And so we ended up moving in while they were finishing up. And it was, constructed with inexpensive materials that most student housing is. So formaldehyde cabinetry, windows that barely opened, high VOC paints, freshly laid carpet with who knows what in it. And she barely pressed further. And I said, well, and actually I'd just gotten back from Africa. And in order to go on this trip, which was an amazing opportunity, my husband's family took me on, but I actually sped up the amount of vaccines I had to receive to go into Tanzania and Kenya. And I remember convincing the nurse, like, I can just have them. I don't have time to come back and get these. Like, I'll just have them all at once. And I did. And I think between, the background that I had growing up with just kind of the standard American diet, and then probably genetically disposed to, like, for instance, I, have the MTHR mutation. So I had some, genetic predispositions to having a hard time detoxifying, and the vaccines, the chemicals and the preservatives in the vaccines, heavy metals, and then the apartment complex. And so now, knowing what we know, we understand that the body has this toxic load and can only handle so much of this quote unquote body burden. And I was spilling over. And yeah.
And one of the other factors that I picked up was the fact that she had been on birth control, and birth control depletes your B6. B6 is really critical for detoxification. So that's a factor.
Yes, definitely low in B vitamins. And of course, now I know I likely had chronic Lyme disease at the time. Didn't know that. So, this is all part of the story. And it's
Marilee always talked about peeling the layers off the onion, so you're
exactly.
healing definitely been like, you've just uncovered more and more as you've gone through this whole process. And then also, not to mention all the things you just listed, but cleaning products and pesticides and personal care
The
products.
low-hanging fruit, the daily exposures that were
Right.
keeping my body from being able to work on the more chronic long-term things. That's exactly right. You know, it's
And
like
we
always
always
say,
talked about how it was ironic that you were like in pain, so you're staying in bed all day. But little did you know that like staying in that environment all day was actually inhibiting you from feeling better. You know, it was potentially contributing to the reason why you were in bed and not able to get up.
exactly. Yeah.
So-
We always tell people, you know, to toss the toxins. Let's look at the daily exposures. Let's look at the things that we're exposed to every single day, and let's remove those things so that our body can work on actually restoring and, you know, detoxifying. You know, if there are health issues there, it leaves energy for the body to work on those things. And I definitely was not leaving that energy, you know, pesticides, hairsprays, you know, every other week
Yeah.
at the nail salon.
Well, so because you were not living alone, obviously you had challenges, but at the same time, you are a personality that's just like, okay, I'm going to go all in. So what did you do? Like, what changes did you make first?
Yeah, definitely. I had some roadblocks to going all in. You know, here I am like sharing a room with 5 other girls in college who could care less about VOCs and paints or pesticides or wanting to stop using hairsprays or Q-Tex nail polish remover, you know, and I'm living at like a sorority house, one of those years where it's like Splenda or bust, right? So
I'm telling you to go fragrance free,
Yes. Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Yeah. I'm like all these endocrine disruptors in fragrances. I'm like, I literally live in like a potpourri pit. But it's amazing. It shows that like, even where you are, for anybody who is listening and feeling like you're stuck and you can't make the changes that you want to make, maybe it's a living situation. Maybe you're sharing a laundry, room with somebody, who's using toxic detergents. Like, sure, that's not ideal. I've been there, but there's so many things you can control, and the body can start healing and repairing just with every single stressor that you can remove is leaving more room and more energy for your body to heal. So I got rid of the 100-calorie packs and the Splenda, and just made as many good choices. I remember Marilee talking to me about the concept of whole food. I knew about Whole Foods, the grocery store, but I never thought about like eating as close to the actual food as possible. I mean, pretty much everything I was eating was like a microwavable, quote unquote, healthy frozen food, or a lot of packaged foods. So I really started being more cognizant about ingredients, actually reading ingredients. I'd never read ingredients in my life. I'd only looked at the nutritional label and looked at calories, because I wanted to be thin. I wanted, so I personally changed some personal care products, definitely threw away like as many of the candles and things that I could control. And I was able to get off some of my, I remember hydrocodone. I mean, I was on 2 pretty high doses of hydrocodone a day, and I was able to cut back on that. I started seeing shifts in my body, positive shifts. And I think that's what piqued Kelly's interest. It's like, I was super pumped about this and getting excited and sharing everything with Kelly, and we were getting closer, and really found out that this was this common passion. She was already, Kelly, you can talk about how you were already, excited about getting into like health and
yeah,
such.
I was a health promotion major, but Marilee, you started talking to us about processed foods and refined sugar and, cleaning products and laundry detergent and all this stuff. And my mind was completely blown. But it all just made sense to me. I think Allison and I bonded over the fact that what we were learning, we just got really passionate about it. And other people thought it was interesting, but for some reason, Allison and I just like gravitated to it and just wanted to know more and more and more and pick Marilee's brain. And it just all really made a lot of sense to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need to think about it. Look at what you just said, Allison. You're going all over the country trying to get help. They give you more and more drugs and more drugs. You got worse and worse. All you did was get your products you were using and took them away, and replaced them with something safe. so simple, not really easy.
Exactly. And I mean, for someone like me who can actually feel those, been through a stage where you can feel those shifts in your body upon making those changes, it just gets easier and easier because I think, wow, like there's something I can control here. I'm not just going to keep getting worse. I'm not just at I'm a victim of my diagnosis.
So when did you start noticing changes, like feeling any relief?
I think as soon as I started taking some of the advice that Marilee had given about, I think for me, the biggest thing was removing some of these toxic chemicals that I was putting in, on, and around my body. I mean, like I said, from, herbal essence shampoo and highly fragranced lotions full of what I now know are endocrine disrupting chemicals with man-made fragrances, and dryer sheets, candles, Splenda, the things I was putting in my mouth. And so I really just, started noticing shifts the more that I could remove those things and replace them with better quality, items.
Yeah. I want to say you started being able to wean off of some of your medications within a few months, or at least 6 months, but for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I think it was just a few. I mean, I remember getting pretty fired up quickly. And that's when I thought, okay, there's something to this. And I started working with a, healthcare practitioner in the Austin area and getting on food-based supplements. So I will definitely admit that having Marilee guide me through some food-based supplements that helped build back up my mineral and nutrient reserves was definitely a part of my healing journey. And especially in a time where I couldn't really control my food as much, we're kind of living off cafeteria food, Kelly. So I think that was a big thing for me. But then, Kelly and I, as we saw this common passion growing between us and I was feeling better, we had talked about maybe upon graduation from University of Texas, we would go abroad and go to a cooking course in Italy or something. We were just young and, no cares in the world. And I was feeling better, like I said. But then all of a sudden, I don't know how exactly it hit us, but I was like, let's go to Marilee's house. She seems to know all of these things and have this amazing amount of knowledge about natural healing. And
it's such a good cook. Let's go learn how to cook from her.
Right. Yeah. She, Marilee's background and cooking medicinally and saving herself from a kidney transplant, which you'll hear in her story, which we can link to in the show notes. But, using food as medicine and cooking for other people. And I mean, just even from building materials to food, we talk about foundation to food. She really seemed to have a lot of experience given everything that she had done with her son, which is a huge part of her story, and helping him heal after pesticide exposure. So we thought, okay, let's go live with Marilee. Poor Marilee didn't know what had hit her when we called her.
Yeah. But Al, you also were not sure if you were going to be able to go take a desk job and actually, work full time after college. So that was another driving force because you were just ready to go heal all the way completely because you had made so much progress. But, we were thinking, wow, if you could just go live with her for the summer.
No, that's right, Kelly. And I'm remembering now that I really wasn't
finally feel better again, completely.
Exactly. For instance, I had tried to take an internship the summer between junior and senior year, and I ended up turning it down and just being a nanny for my mom's best friend and driving her daughter around because I just couldn't sit at a desk for long periods of time. So I was definitely ready to go all in and feel my best because I felt like I couldn't even start applying for jobs in the PR field until I could feel better. Yeah.
So we show up to Marilee's and we're like, all right, we're here.
Marilee, what were you thinking when we asked to come live with you?
I was really excited when you asked if Kelly could come too. I thought, wow, this is going to be an incredible experience because I was working 12 hours, 14 hours a day. I mean, consulting all day long. I thought, how am I going to do this? But I just felt like I couldn't turn it down. It was such an opportunity. I knew what was going to happen. It was just going to be such a great, result. So,
Marilee, I remember you saying not very long ago, you were like, when you called and asked me if you could come and then to bring Kelly, you were like, it was one of the craziest things I'd ever heard. I just knew it had to be God. And I just had to kind of go with it and see like what was here. And I'm so glad you did, because that's pretty much where the company idea started that summer. This was 2009.
I started making y'all books and all kinds of things. The very minute we got off the phone, I thought, I've got to prepare.
Literally, we show up to Marilee's and have 2 binders full of information and like a really awesome knife for each of us, you know, because we were going to be cooking a lot.
You pretty much chopped for hours the summer of 2009.
Yes. We prepared like 2 amazing meals a day.
Organic, plant-based.
Yeah. It was amazing. We grounded every morning. Like, well, some of you may be like, what's grounding? I had no idea what that was before the summer. We went out barefoot in the morning, early morning, when the grass was still a little bit wet. Marilee taught us all about the benefits of that and just connecting to the earth. And we drank juice that she and her friend made us, like not just like apple juice and orange juice like Allison and I were used to, but kale and celery and, you know, beets, all the
way before juicing was a thing. I mean, juice was not being sold at stores. There were no juice shops, like maybe Whole Foods, but it was definitely before the juice craze.
Yeah. And then what else did we do? We took tons of walks. We sat in the sauna. We
got off our phones. I mean, Marilee said no cell phones. Yeah. That was
big.
But
we always talk about, most of all, Marilee, just living in a house free of harmful chemicals. You always are good at reminding us that was such a big, big portion of it, that you don't have to have all these tools like infrared.
Yeah, it's not like what we were exposed to as much as what we were not exposed to, almost.
Yeah, it was a great shift for you to come to a place where you weren't dealing with the, product that was under the sink, or, what your roommate had on her hair, etc. So we don't realize how much those things impact us. And, it's fine to go out during the day and experience, we all get exposures when we go to school, to work and everything. But if we come home and our house is a safe haven, then our bodies just are able to restore, replenish, repair, like Allison started doing. So
Al, tell us about just how you felt, during that summer and after.
Yeah. So those 8 weeks literally changed my life. I mean, from physically to just even directionally. And I found my passion. It was the launching point for Branch Basics. And I think, Kelly, you could probably say the same thing. We joke that you either have to be sick or smart to get into this lifestyle. And I was the sick one. You can guess who was the smart one. So by the end of the summer, I was off all prescription medication, no pain medicine, no sleeping pills. I mean, I was still sleeping on an ice pack here and there, but it's something that's hard to understand until you experience it yourself. But like, there was nothing, or there was nobody that could convince me that this lifestyle was not the reason for my healing. And so I just felt it so deeply, and you could just see it, and just the energy I had. And so when we left Marilee's, I no longer wanted to apply to a PR firm and sit behind a desk. I mean, I think for some people that's awesome, and it would have been an amazing opportunity, but Kelly and I were on fire. Like, we just wanted to get this information out there. We wanted to empower people, listening to client calls of Marilee's, almost every day, listening to her ask people the same questions, no matter what their symptom was or the reason for them finding Marilee and asking for help, whether it was behavioral issues with a child, or a husband's chronic eczema, or migraines, or whatever it was. She was always asking, what are you eating? Where are you living? Let's talk about, do you use pesticides? It was all of these things, these lifestyle changes that were so empowering for them, because they could control it. And it wasn't people, just a lot of people think that we're the victims of our genetics, or we have to always be labeled with certain diagnoses. And so, went out into the real world. And, you know, Kelly, you and I moved into a house actually that had some toxic issues, but there was enough good being poured into my body. I was empowered to make good choices with my health. I was still eating out time to time at restaurants using, I'm sure, bad quality oils here and there, but I was, for the most part, you know, I had entered this new realm and, kind of enlightenment in terms of natural healing and using food as medicine. And so sure enough, a year later, my husband, or I guess we were about to get engaged at the time, but he said, let's go back to your doctor from high school that was diagnosed with PCOS. Let's get another sonogram and just see where you are. I mean, your body seems to have made so many amazing shifts. And I'll be honest, like I was pretty nervous about that. Like I hadn't had a sonogram for, I guess was now maybe 7 or 8 years since that sonogram, since my diagnosis. And I had been off birth control. Marilee said, I'm not going to work with you if you're going to stay on birth control. I got off that immediately because it's a synthetic hormone and we were trying to get those out of my body. And sure enough, I went and got a sonogram. It was actually the nurse practitioner that did the sonogram that day. And the doctor was just too booked to see me, but it was the doctor that ran in with the results, like holding the first sonogram from years prior to the current one. And he said, tell me about this. Like, how did this happen? And my cysts were virtually gone. I had like 2 cysts on one ovary and 1 cyst on the other ovary. I was basically no longer, you know, under the PCOS label. And, he wanted me to talk to PCOS support groups. And it was interesting. By that time, he had incorporated into his practice some classes that were talking to people about lifestyle changes they could make to help PCOS. So again, like there's been a lot that's happened since 2002 when I was diagnosed with PCOS. But yeah, it was amazing. I mean, just that feeling of like, I told him, I said, I've been off birth control now for a few years. And I told him all about the summer in 2009 with Marilee, you know, the summer before. And he was pretty jaw dropped.
Yeah, incredible. And I love that he was so open to you know, like agreeing with it and wanting to share that with his patients. But Al, you still weren't menstruating yet. And that was kind of the next thing that you were still really working on. Tell
Absolutely.
us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And Marilee, you can describe a little bit about the reproductive system and how that's typically not one of the first things, you know, to turn back on.
If someone has reproductive issues and they also have other health issues, that's the last arena of the body that will be taken care of, because, you know, you really don't want to reproduce until you're healthy. So the body puts priority. And I knew that Allison would start her period soon, but, you know, I knew it would take time. She needed some time to heal.
It's kind of like the last thing, like when you're in survival mode, you know, your body doesn't need to be reproducing. So that makes sense. I was pretty boosted, I'll admit, by seeing the sonogram. I mean, it's one thing to feel better and to be able to get off medication, but then to really just see like the test right in front of you, be able to compare my ovaries from a few years ago to my ovaries now was an amazing boost of confidence for me to continue and just doing the good that I knew. So my husband and I got married soon after that. And we continued to make really good choices. I mean, as we were looking for our new house, we had tested for mold and did like the Branch Basics deep clean to help get rid of pesticide residues. And I was eating as clean as possible, not perfect, but much better, of course, than I had, you know, previous to Marilee coming in my life. And we've been married about 2 years, I guess. And one day I woke up and went to the bathroom, no other symptoms, but there was blood. And like literally my husband and I still talk about how it was more exciting than our wedding day because it basically was just showing that my body was restarting and working and that we were able to have a family, which is obviously, you know, what we wanted. And we wanted, fertility treatments are amazing and such a blessing for so many people, but we felt confident that that just wasn't part of our journey and my story. And we knew that my body had the ability to heal and that it just needed time. And sure enough, my period came and my cycle was pretty irregular, but as you know, I continued to do the good that I knew. And I was on some supplements to help build my body up.
working with a practitioner, a preconception practitioner out in California. And the show notes will link to my story that has information on him and his website and some of his work and just lifestyle things that I was incorporating for gentle detoxing. I was using the infrared sauna. But a few years later, we were able to get pregnant, naturally with my now 4-year-old. And my pregnancies were great. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old, and they were both conceived naturally. So.
Yep. Our girls our first ones are just a month apart. So that was so fun. So remember I walked in and I literally thought Allison was joking. She was like, "Oh, I'm pregnant too." Cause I just told her a few weeks before that I was pregnant. And I was like, haha, like if y'all know Allison, she's very like sarcastic. She's very funny, a very good liar.
I can carry out a joke for sometimes too.
And then she went and showed me the pregnancy test. I was like, oh my gosh. But anyway, yeah. So great pregnancies and then awesome natural births, which I don't want to take too long on this because we have awesome blog posts that you've written on your birth experiences. But then fast forward a little bit to today. Like you mentioned, you now have chronic Lyme, or you discovered you did, and you're kind of in remission from that now. So tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
So I was virtually symptom-free and had both of my girls. And then September of 2019, I moved into a home that had mold. And within a few months, I could just feel something was off. I remember sending Kelly a picture of my skin and I was like, something is going on, like acne flare-ups. I had my girls at that time were 3 and 1. So, and they're 21 months apart. So that was a lot for my body. We were surprised.
Definitely stressed.
Yes, definitely a lot. Pretty much I've been breastfeeding or pregnant for 4 years in a row. And my body pretty much just kind of went into a downward spiral at that point. And so 4 or 5 months later, this was March, basically a year ago now. So March of 2020, I saw a Lyme literate MD here in Houston who ran a whole panel. It never even crossed my mind that I had Lyme disease, but for those that have Lyme or are familiar, like my CD57, like basically there were some markers that presented that, to her were indicative that I could be dealing with chronic Lyme. And sure enough, I did an IGeneX test and it was positive for Babesia, which is a co-infection with Lyme, and Lyme, which she believes could have been in my body, passed down from my mom, or at least for 20 or 30 years. If you know anything about chronic Lyme, it's completely different than acute Lyme. And there's several, a lot of people have it. And then there is typically, like an event, whether it's stress, a death in the family, a mold exposure that can then bring up those symptoms. So it usually doesn't, just travel alone. But what's amazing is that by the time I moved out of this house, and now we have actually taken our family, and between my diagnosis and just with COVID and being able to work remotely, we were blessed enough to be able to move to the country. So the amount of healing that my body has experienced in the past few months, just living in clean air and away from just, Houston with a lot more pollution and electromagnetic fields, like it's been pretty incredible. Watching my body once again respond pretty quickly by just removing these toxic sources.
Yep. Getting out of that house was really key.
Yes. Yeah. So right now I'm feeling amazing. I don't even like to say that I have Lyme. I'm about to do another test and I'd love to see that, negative mark. I think I'm going to get it now or soon.
And you heard more than once from practitioners and doctors that you saw that they were so amazed at how highly functioning you were and how much energy you had considering your Lyme, but attributed it to your lifestyle and the fact that you aren't exposing yourself every day to these products and chemicals in your food, et cetera. So
no, I'm glad you said that, Kelly, because it is true. I'm currently working with a nurse practitioner who ran a bunch of functional labs. And she said, Allison, if I didn't know you and I was just looking at your lab, she's like, I would see probably 8 different labels, like medical labels on you. And I would see probably at least 7 different prescription drugs, like from back to the, antidepressants and sleeping pills. And she's like, these labs are crazy. Like in comparison, like to the energy that you have and high functionality you have. And she says that really, it can only point to your lifestyle choices. So that really should empower people who are listening that your choices do matter, and they can make all the difference. At least they have for me.
Absolutely. Okay. Before we wrap up, I don't want to just like completely ignore the emotional and mindset part of all of this, all
Yes.
that you've been through, because just kind of going through the story and rattling off, this happened and this happened, it can kind of sound like you just went through it all so easily or whatever. But there have been so many times that you've called me crying or texted me and said, please pray. I can't, I don't know how. I'm just in a really, really low and dark spot right now,
Yeah.
And how many times we've talked about how like it stinks for you, but all this stuff that you've gone through so much, the beauty is that you are getting to share this to help other people. And so you've been so amazing to be able to be willing to like put your story out there and help others. And I know people are always texting you and calling you and asking for advice, and you're helping them. But just, I don't know, is there anything you want to share just about that side of it, the emotional and,
Yes.
that part of it?
No, I'm definitely glad you said that. And, as someone can look back and tell their story, it's amazing how the mind can forget like how bad things can be, or were. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, I can't believe that you have gone through that. Like, we never know how much we can handle until we have to handle it. And Kelly, you've asked like some good questions, but they've also been hard because it's like brought me back to these moments of how hard it really was. And some of you listening may be in that hard spot. And it's just, you probably know this, but healing is never linear. Like there's always going to be ups and downs. And even as you're getting better, like Kelly mentioned, there's layers of the onion, of our body, and we can pull up, as we're healing, our body then has the energy to take care of something that may be kind of nasty that you're dealing with, whether it's a mold exposure you had years ago or parasites, the body is kind of what they call like your body retraces as it heals. And so, I used to think, like acne meant that someone has a really bad diet or something, I'm like, now sometimes I look at someone that has some skin issues and I'm like, gosh, like they're probably healing. Like they're, because a lot of times like it can feel bad and look bad and it can be yucky as you're getting stuff out of your body. Because it took a lot of years. Like I worked really hard at getting really sick. I made really poor choices because I just didn't know. And my parents didn't know. So that's why we started the company, so that you will know. And so we can share our stories and empower people. And as Marilee always says, like to prevent people from saying, why didn't somebody tell me this? So yeah. It's always good to find community and to connect with other people who are going through what you're going through. I've met some amazing people in this Lyme journey that have actually been such a blessing. I'm about to go meet with someone right now who's really struggling. So reach out to people that aren't feeling well and may just be having a hard time sharing that.
Well, and just even dealing with those emotions, like that can be so healing, just you really taught me a lot about, and Marilee too, about just how healing the emotional part of what we've been through, like from from birth to now, that is just as important as addressing, the dietary and, products and things like that too. So Marilee, anything you want to add or?
Yes, on that point, even fear, anxiety, stressors, they are just like a chemical exposure. They create in the body a response. The cells will shut down, the the nutrition can't get in, the toxins can't get out. And so dealing with the toxic thoughts, toxic stress, is critical for healing for anyone.
Absolutely.
And one of the first things I look for when I talk to someone is I want to gather, do they feel like they're going to get well? Do they feel hopeless? Do they think they're stuck or they'll just be this way forever? I want to shift their perception or their perspective and think, oh my gosh, I can do these things. It's easy to take these steps and I can take this immune stress off and I can just watch my body heal the way we're intended to. So if you cut yourself and you don't come back every day with a knife and cut yourself again, the body heals. This is what we're always in, a healing mode. But we're putting things in our bodies, on our bodies, around our bodies that are hijacking that process. Get those away and it starts going just naturally. It's like Allison experienced.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's end on that. That is powerful and so true. Okay, Al, thanks so much for walking us through that.
Yes. Thank you all for listening. I hope it's helpful for somebody, and feel free to always reach out and ask us questions.
All right. Talk to you
Bye, guys.
later. Bye.